Okay, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. Thank you also for muting your microphones and turning off your web cameras. You'll also notice that there's a chat facility happening down the right-hand navigation of the team webinar. So Jenny and I will be monitoring the chat. So if there's any questions, I know Jenny's already put this on, please ask your questions in the chat and we will answer them as appropriate. So my name is Susan Say and my colleague Jenny Mackay is joining us today, and we're both Digital Skills Development Officers with Education Scotland. So this afternoon for the next hour we are going to be looking at OneNote and Class OneNote. Now we did badge this session Class OneNote, but we had a chat and thought it was quite useful to actually go into OneNote first to get a deep understanding of OneNote, and then that makes the Class OneNote part of it much easier. So within the GLOW environment, we have access to industry standard tools. Now, these are tools for learning, life and work. The big benefit of using these tools within the GLOW environment is that we can access them anywhere we have an internet connection. So we're going to be looking at OneNote and Class OneNote, and that's both within the Office 365 environment within Office 365. So what we're looking at this afternoon, we're going to have an overview of OneNote, how to create a OneNote, how to add content to OneNote, including rich media, and how to manage your OneNote file. Could I just ask everyone to make sure their microphones are muted? I'm hearing quite a bit of background noise. So if you just hover your mouse over the bottom of the screen, you'll see there's a microphone. As long as it's got a diagonal line through it, that means it's muted. I'm then going to pass over to my colleague Jenny, who's going to give you an overview of Class OneNote, particularly looking at the teacher area and the student areas and the benefits behind them. We're then going to see how Class OneNote is integrated into the Teams environment. If anyone didn't manage to catch our Teams webinar, then we have recorded it and it is on DigiLearn Scot website. We're also hoping to run some more Teams and OneNote sessions in the next term. So again, keep an eye on the DigiLearn Scot website, and that's where all the webinars will be advertised. We're then going to look at where we can go for extra help and support with these tools that we've looked at today. So first of all, we're going to look at OneNote and how we can set up a OneNote and how we can use it. So I use OneNote on a daily basis for my work. So basically any meeting or any event I go to, I always type up my notes, save my hyperlink, save photographs, all within OneNote. That means I can access my notes anywhere I have an internet connection. There's also a built-in search facility that searches all my notes. So if I forget what day the meeting was, then I can just search for some keywords and that information will come up instantly. So what is OneNote? So basically it's like your ring binders that you have at school. Within the ring binder, you then have your dividers, and we call that in OneNote your sections. And within each section, you have multiple pages. That means your content within that ring binder is all nicely divided into the different sections, making it easy to find information. Each page is a complete blank canvas, so you can scroll horizontally and vertically. And wherever your mouse is, that's where the content will be added. Supports all kinds of rich media, so we're going to see how we can embed videos, how we can record narration and add photographs onto our pages. So again, I've just mentioned we collate all our notes and links and resources all in the one place. You can also share your OneNotes, which again is really good. So certainly in my old job, I used to work with my colleague in Aberdeenshire and we had a shared OneNote. So if any of us went to any meetings, we typed up our notes and the other person could read the notes from that meeting before we'd even left the building. So a really nice way to share and collaborate with colleagues. So I'm now going to go into the live environment where I'm going to set up my OneNote and I'm going to add some content to it. Feel free if you want to follow along at home. All you'd have to do is open another tab in your browser. So we're going to be looking at the benefits of using OneNote online, and we're going to talk about using it offline. The difference being when we talk about online, that's using OneNote in a browser. So logging on to Glow and then open up OneNote on a browser like Safari or Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome. There's also an option when you log into Glow that you can download Microsoft Office. So if you download Microsoft Office, you will then have what's called the desktop version of these apps. So you will be able to access OneNote on your desktop. And there's slightly more features, not many, but just slightly more features that are available on the desktop version. And they're most likely when you're in your school environment, you will also have access to the desktop version. So I'm just going to stop this slideshow just now. And I'm going to pop into Google Chrome. And this is where I've logged into Glow already. So there isn't a tile for OneNote. Hopefully you all know you can create your own tiles if you want. So if you do have a OneNote, I've got an example OneNote that I've opened here. So I could copy the link and I can add my own tiles. However, the easiest way to access OneNote is probably through your OneDrive or through Office 365 Home. And I'm going to demonstrate that just now. So that's the two easiest ways to access OneNote. So I'm just going to open up Office 365 Home. And this is a nice, easy tile to access all the apps that we have got access to within Office 365 in Glow. And you can also see there's a more apps, so there's actually more than the ones that are listed there. But the important ones that we're looking at today are OneNote, Class Notebook, and we'll briefly be talking about Teams as well, all accessible from that Office 365 tile. If you click on OneDrive or your Outlook mail, you will always see this toolbar along the top. And at the top left-hand side, this is your app launcher. Some people call it the waffle. When you click on your waffle or app launcher, again, you can access all the apps within Office 365. So multiple ways to access your OneNote files. So I'm going to click on OneNote just now. So along the top navigation, you can see my recent OneNotes. I've also got all my notebooks in one place there. If my colleague, like Jenny, who's in the call today, if she shares a notebook with me, it will always appear in Shared with Me. I can also access all my class notebooks here as well. Now, when you do create a team site, so if anybody joined the call last week, you can create a class team site. It automatically creates a class notebook for you. So that's a huge time saving. So it's up to you whether you want the team site with the class notebook embedded in there, or if you want a standalone class notebook. But again, that will become clearer throughout this webinar. Just now, I'm going to click on the Add New. Please note that all your notebooks are also automatically saved in OneDrive. In OneDrive, there's automatically a folder. So I've got mine open just now, so I'll just show you. It's called Notebooks. And within there, you can access your OneNotes. So again, it's a nice, easy way to find your notebooks. So I'm just going to click on Add New. And here, this is where you can select either class notebook or blank notebook. So for this section here, I'm just going to do blank notebook. I'm going to give it a name. You'll notice that I've got a red error coming up. So if you have got a notebook that's already got the same name, you will get an error. And that's why I've put a number 2 at the end of this, because it's just one for demo. And I'll click Create. And you will see now that I've got my blank notebook already created. Now remember I talked about that ring binder folder. So this is my ring binder folder. Bottom left hand side, this is where I can add my sections. So these are like my dividers in my folder. So the first divider, it's the first section, I'm going to call it Literacy. I want to add a new section. And this one will be my numeracy. And one more for health and well-being. Okay, so I can jump easily between my sections just by clicking on them there. On the right-hand side of the section, I can add my pages, and you can have any number of pages within that section. Certainly Jenny and we've been using OneNotes for a number of years, and our OneNotes are really beginning to get lots of information in them with multiple sections and probably hundreds of pages. You'll see it says Untitled. It will stay untitled until I add a title over here on my blank canvas. So I'm just going to call this one Romeo and Juliet. And you can see now it's named my page. So my literacy section and my Romeo and Juliet page within that section. I can also add more pages if I want. So this one I'm going to give an overview of how to insert content. This one could just be called page 3. So you can see how I can build up all my pages that are linked to my numeracy section. I'm now going to demonstrate how we can add content to our OneNote. So along the top here is my toolbar, and this looks very familiar if you use Word online. So my Home tab has all the formatting tools that are associated with Word Online. So if I start typing here, you can see my text is on the page. I can highlight my text and I can format it. Let's make it a little bit bigger, possibly bold. If I click my cursor over here, you can see there's a box appearing. That means anything you put on your page is an object. So my text over here is an object, and if I start typing text over here, again it's an object. So let me just click over here, and I want to make this object box slightly bigger so all my text is on one line. If I hover over my object box, you can see the arrows, which means I can move my text about my blank canvas. So I'm in full control of how I want my page to be structured. Along here, you can also see how you've got your format, so you can format your text, and how you can also put some bullet points. So under here, I want to start a new box with new objects inside it. And if I highlight this text here, whoops, dictionary's popped up. If I highlight my text, I can put some bullet points in there. Let's make the text slightly bigger so you can see it clearly. So I can put some bullet points in there, or I can choose how I want the bullet points to be displayed. I'm just going to remove them just now. Because there's other things I'd like to show you. And probably one of my favourite areas within OneNote are the tags. So the tags can be accessible over here. So I might want to turn this into a to-do list. I don't know if you're like me, I love creating a to-do list, especially with things I've already done, just so I can tick them off. Gives me a sense of achievement. So I can then tick off my to-do list. It's quite nice if you've got any meetings and you have some agenda items, you can tick them off as you're going along, or you might have some actions from that meeting. And again, if it's a shared notebook, your colleagues can tick off that actions when they've been completed. Looking at the tags, so I might want this to be a little bit more important. So if I click on the drop-down menu, I might want to give it a little star because this is something really important. I might also want to add a hyperlink. Now, a hyperlink can be added through the Insert tab. So we will be exploring the Insert tab in more detail in a second, but I just wanted to go on to the links. First of all, I need to find my link. So I've got a tab open up here. I'm going to copy because I'd like to share this link with my colleagues I'm working with. So I can paste the address in here. And I can give my link a name. And when I click Insert, I might want to make it slightly larger so you can all see it at your side. You can see that's given me a hyperlink. But if I go back to my tags, I might want to distinguish that a bit more and put a little tag in with a little hyperlink icon beside it, and again I can move this about. The other thing I might want to post are some questions for my learners. If I go back to my tags, I can use the little question mark over here, which highlights that that's some questions that I would like an answer for. The other one that's quite nice that your learners might want to use is the ideas. So again, your tag will go where your cursor is placed on the page. So if I go back up here to ideas, it gives me a little light bulb beside my ideas. So you can see now on my page how I can distinguish the different content by adding the relevant tags, which is quite nice. You've also got styles for your text, which is again the same as you've got in your Microsoft Word. So you can put headings and titles. I've also got my spell checker over here. And my spell checker is really useful, but I've also got set language. Now, the first time you go into this, it's set at American English. It's a little bit of a nuisance, but it is good housekeeping and good digital skills for your pupils to go in there and change it to English UK. I know it's a little bit of a nuisance. And click on OK. I've also got a dictate tool within OneNote. So that's really useful so I can convert speech to text. Again, that's where it's really important to have your proofing language set to UK. So if I just click on my dictate, I am using the dictate tool. Whoops, put my cursor over here. Let's try again. It went into the title. That was my mistake. Please stop. So you can see that it has picked up my voice, but let me try again. I am using the dictate tool in OneNote. And then you click stop. So that's a really useful tool because, as you know, you get more out of your pupils if they're talking about their learning rather than typing. So it's quite a good tool. We would recommend that you use a headset because then it'll capture their voice much better. Okay, so I'm going to now go to, let me just delete this bit here because it's getting a little bit messy. I'm going to go up to my Insert tab because there's a few things I'd like to demonstrate in here. Now I can insert a table. Now I can make the table however big I want it to be. So add it to your page. And you can use the handles to make your boxes bigger if you so wish. You can also highlight your text in your table, go to Home, and you can increase your text. And again, very similar to Microsoft Word. When you're on your table, the Table tab opens up along the top, which means you can insert columns and rows, and you can add some shading if you so wish. You can then move your table wherever you want it to go. The other thing I can do over here is I can insert files. So this might be my page to pull together all my content knowledge for Romeo and Juliet book report. So I'm just going to sort out my title. So I've already got my book report typed up on a Word document. So if I click on the screen, remember my documents will go wherever my cursor is on the screen. So I'd like it to go maybe down there. And if I go to File, I've got two options in here. I can insert an attachment, so that will just give me a little Word logo. I click on that and my document will open up. Or I can insert a file printout. And I'm just going to demonstrate the file printout. Choose File, and I've got something on my desktop. Just a Word document. This will work with Excel and any pictures you got or PDFs. So it'll just take a wee minute just to load, and you can see now I can actually see what's inside that Word document. However, if I wanted to download the document, I would double click on here and I would download the document. So it is a nice way to showcase all the work that's been put into this area of work. So the other thing I'd like to do is add a picture. Now, when you go to Insert and Picture along the top, you've got a few options in here. So you can insert a live picture from your camera, and this is particularly useful if you're using an iPad. So taking your pictures, possibly you might be in an event, and then the pictures can go straight in to your OneNote. I do this if I'm taking pictures of slides at a session that I'm at. I can also upload a picture I've already got saved on my computer. I'm going to go to Online Pictures, because this will open up Bing Creative Commons, so I know that all these pictures are copyright free. So I'm just going to use the first picture that appears and insert at the bottom right-hand side. And that's now inserted onto my page. We've also looked at links already, but the next one is audio. So I might want to, so the last one we looked at was dictate, so that was me speaking and then the text appears on the page. But in insert, I can actually record something that will appear, that will be embedded in my page. So I'm just going to hit record. I'll put my cursor maybe down over here. This is my book report about Romeo and Juliet. Click stop. And you can record up to 3 minutes, 23 seconds on the recording. I can just move it over here. So now when I select it, you can see I've got a play button at the top right hand side, so it will play back my recording. But I could also play from this toolbar along the top. I can also go back 15 seconds and forward 15 seconds, especially if it was a 3-minute recording. So that's a nice way of capturing pupil voice. So now I have lots of information for my project on the one page in my literacy section. I can also add some math tools. So down here, I'm just going to put in an equation. If I highlight my equation and then go to my maths tool, it will convert my text into an equation. I can then select an action. So if I want, I can add a graph for that equation and simply insert that onto my page. So that's really quite a powerful tool to use, especially in a secondary school. And again, I can move my graph somewhere on the page if I so wish. I can also add emojis to my page. So you might have a page to use with your learners, and it might be simply, how are you feeling today? Pupils can then go into the emojis and they can add an emoji to express how they're feeling today. I'm going to talk about forms in a second, but you can also go into stickers. And again, I'm going to talk about them just now. So let's recap. I've created sections for different areas of the curriculum. I've also added some pages under the literacy section. I've added lots of content to my page, and it's all saved automatically into my OneNote. My OneNote is accessible from OneNote on the app launcher and also in my OneDrive. I'm now going to open up an example OneNote that I've got created. So this one again, you can see it's very similar with my sections and my pages. The first one here is looking at what I can do with my Home tab. So we all know now how we can add text to the page and how we can format the text, all within this tab along the top. We know we can add some to-do lists and how we can also add some tags to the text on the page. We then went into Insert, and we know how we can insert tables and how we can search online and add copyright-free pictures. We also know we can take live pictures, especially on a mobile device, and how we can also upload pictures we've already got saved. We can also attach files, and we know if we attach a file, then it will appear like a little Word document logo, or PowerPoint, or PDF, or Excel, or JPEG. However, if I want my teacher to see the content of my document on the page, I can insert a file printout. And then my teacher can actually see straight away the work I've been doing. The teacher could then use the draw tool to annotate over this piece of work. And Jenny's going to go into that in more detail in her section. I can also insert forms. So Jenny and I will be delivering a session about forms. So if you want to find out more about forms, then please sign up for that session. I'm just going to delete this one here and I'm going to show you how I managed to add it. So Microsoft Form is a nice way of creating a survey or a self-marking quiz. Now, who wouldn't like a self-marking quiz? So I'm going to click on the Insert tab along the top here, and Forms appears on the right-hand side. And I have a few options in here. I can create a brand new form, which is like a survey, or a brand new self-marking quiz. Or I can browse for one I've already created. So I'm going to use one I've already created and click Insert. I'll just close this section here. And you can see now it's added my self-marking quiz to my page. So my learners could then go through and answer the questions, click Submit, and then they can see their scores. Nice and easy. The other section here was stickers. Now, stickers are a really nice way of providing teacher feedback. So within OneNote and Class OneNote, you can share. So Class OneNote, automatically the teacher will have access to all the OneNote files. However, this OneNote just now is private to me. I could choose to share that with my teacher or my colleague, and then they could provide some feedback to me. I'm going to click on the stickers. There's lots of stickers to choose from. If you find a sticker that has a pencil beside it, it means you can customize it. You can edit that sticker for your own needs and requirements. So I'm going to look at this one's here. Let's just choose one. Again, you can edit this. Once you're happy, you just click Done. It's a really nice way of providing feedback for your learners. So once the sticker loads, remember it's an object. So you hover over the object and you can move that object anywhere on your screen. It's also got object handles. So if you click on the sticker, the object handles appear in all the corners. So you can click and drag so it's an appropriate size. And there's lots of nice ones to choose from. If I was a teacher, I could also give some text feedback, or I could use the audio to record some feedback. Down my sections on the left-hand navigation, I've also got an example of how it could be used in modern languages. Again, because that audio feature is so powerful. These are my numbers. And the learner here has recorded themselves saying the numbers 1 to 10. If I select one, I can play here, or I can play from the audio tab at the top. Now I can simply which one and listen to their pronunciation. This could also be used as a reflection tool. So if a few weeks' time I maybe forget my French numbers, I could go back into my OneNote and I could listen to the recordings again. It could also be used as evidence of progression. So hopefully throughout this OneNote, my teacher would hear me progressing with my language skill. The other thing I can do in here is I could use the Dictation Tool. Now remember we went in and set the proofing language to English UK. I might want to set it to French just for this piece of work. Once I've set it to French, I could then use my Dictate tool. Bonjour, je m'appelle Suzanne. And you can see that text now has appeared on the screen. I'm just going to check to see that it's went back to UK. The other way I could use this is I could use my tables and insert some copyright-free pictures. And this is a really nice visual representation of this piece of work. So I have the picture of the cat, I have the text in French, and then the student saying the word in French. And again, for all the other animals. This is some literacy pages. So at the end of this project, looking at George's Marvellous Medicine by Roald Dahl, the student here pulled together her content knowledge and gave some text. She then added a copyright-free picture and she embedded her book report in there. She then worked with a partner and they created a book report using some green screen technology so they could transport the pupils into that book to deliver that book report. So all that work around George's Marvellous Medicine is all pulled together into this OneNote. And that's really quite powerful because then the student can log on at home and share their learning with their parent. Similarly, we did this for the India project, green screen technology again, and she's outlined how she actually created this. Nice evidence of progression. I demonstrated briefly how we could use the maths tools. This one here again, attaching a file, but this is a file printout so the teacher can see what's included. When we go up to the equations, you can see I demonstrated how we could use it in a browser. If you've downloaded Microsoft Office 2016, then you will have the desktop version of OneNote. And when you go into the maths tools, there's much more to choose from. Quadratic formula, Pythagorean theorem, there's lots you can choose from. So again, for our secondary maths colleagues, it's maybe worthwhile exploring the desktop version to get the full functionality of the maths tools. We demonstrated audio. Now, audio is really nice to add and really easy using the browser, and you saw me demonstrating that during this session. However, if you want to record a live video onto your page, you would require to use the OneNote 2016 desktop version. I've taken a screenshot of the toolbars just to show you the difference. So this is it on the browser, and when we say browser, that's like Safari or Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome, accessed via Glow. So when I go to insert, I can add audio, and you saw that demonstrated not long ago. However, if I open OneNote on the desktop, so you might have this in your school, then I can click Insert, record audio, but also record video. And again, that's really powerful for capturing pupil voice. So that's one of the differences between the browser and the desktop. You saw how I could add copyright-free images, and I just grabbed a maths one for this section. You can also customize your backgrounds. So when you go to the View tab along the top, you might want to change the page colour. And again, that's easier on the eye rather than the harsh white. If you use a desktop version, then there's more options. So here's the page colour in the desktop version, but next to it, you've also got paper styles. So it might be worth exploring that, where you can have lined paper and graph paper. Once you add that to your notebook using the desktop version, then it will still be visible then when you access it on the browser. There's also built-in accessibility tools. So if any of you have joined our sessions before, we always talk about the learning tools, especially Immersive Reader. Immersive Reader is accessible on Outlook Mail, on Word, on Microsoft Teams, and on OneNote. So here's a wee example. So I've got some text on my page, but I'm struggling to understand this text because I'm slightly dyslexic. So if I click on my View tab along the top, I'll select Immersive Reader. It strips back my page to prevent visual crowding. By default, I have set my page to always turn black. That makes it easier, and I prefer black as a background. So if I access Word or my Outlook Mail, it will always be black because it remembers what I prefer. But I might want to change it to lilac or pale pink or lemon. I can then go into the text preferences and highlight the grammar options, highlight my nouns, verbs and adjectives. We do go into this in more detail when we're using the Getting Started with Glow session, but this is just giving you a little insight to the benefits. Under the reading preferences, I can also have a picture dictionary enabled. That means if I'm struggling to understand this word, I can hear it, but I can also see a visual representation of that word, which is really useful. If you are using OneNote for embedding 1+2 or in a secondary modern languages environment, or if your students are working at home and their parent has English as an additional language, then you can convert any text within Office 365 to any language with one click through Immersive Reader. Again, we go into this in more detail at the Getting Started with Glow session. Just now, I could click play and I could have my text read back to me. So that's really good for pupils understanding the work that you've set them. I can also embed content onto my page. We saw how we could embed a form quite easily and how learners can go through that form and answer the self-marking quiz. If you're used to using Sway for presentations and your learners use Sway, then you may want to embed Sways into your OneNotes as well. Again, pulling together all that content knowledge. So this is a presentation, and you can see I've just added the link and it automatically embeds it. So I don't need to faff about looking for embed codes or doing something fancy. All it looks for is a link for the Sway, and it will embed it automatically. I also have the option to make it full screen if I so wish. I can also embed YouTube videos. And again, there's nothing fancy involved. All I do is add the link to the page and it will automatically embed the video into my page. Nice and easy. Okay, so we've looked at all the tools within OneNote. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague who's going to talk about Class OneNote. Are we up to date with the questions for OneNote, Jenny? Jenny?
Just realised my mouse was on. Sorry, I realised my mouse was on mute. So someone asking if we can share the accessibility table of where all these additional tools are. Yes, we absolutely can. And not too many other questions that we've not already answered. So we're okay to proceed along to the next section.
Brilliant. So these slides are shared in this site that we're on just now along the files at the top. So you can pop in and have a look at that Immersive Reader tool table. Cool.
Okay, so as Susan has said, OneNote has a huge array of tools. The benefit of us showing you OneNote before Class OneNote is that all of those tools are also available within Class OneNote, available for yourself as well as your young people. Also, if you're using them in a professional learning capacity, you can create a Class OneNote if you're a member of senior leadership team, and you can share resources and information back and forward with pupils, the pupil section being also members of your staff. However, we're going to focus on this as use within a classroom. So as Susan has said, it has unlimited storage, so it doesn't matter how many pupils are within your class or how many resources you share with them, they can all access everything at once. The benefit of using Class OneNote is that, as Susan showed you those sections, each pupil gets essentially their own jotter. Unlike a jotter in the classroom that anyone can pick up, the jotter is only accessible to the young person and the adults who own the class notebook. So we'll move over into Class Note just now. So I'm just going to share my screen with you all, and you should all now be seeing my Launchpad. Can you see that okay, Susan?
Perfect.
Great. My broadband for everybody who's joining us today has been a little unstable, so if there's a little lag between you seeing and what I'm clicking, please bear with us. So as Susan identified, there's lots of ways to access Class Notebook. It can be accessed through your OneDrive. It can also be accessed through the Waffle, but we'll come to that in a second. I'm going to use the 365 home icon on my Launchpad. Once I've clicked it and it opens up, we'll see all of the tiles available to us. Here is Class Notebook, but as I said, and as Susan has shown you, you can also identify that from the Waffle or App Launchpad, which is up in the top corner. And I would just click here. To create a notebook or to access one, I would just select the icon for Class Notebook. So it doesn't matter if you're starting afresh or opening an existing one, that's the tile that you would use. Whenever you click that tile, it'll offer you these 4 buttons. These are really, really useful. At any point, you can amend a notebook by using this Manage Notebook. That means that you can share it with someone, you can add sections, and we'll come on to that later. There's also these 2 purple tiles, one for adding and removing teachers and one for students. This is really useful if you have a pupil that perhaps leaves to go to another class or another school. You can remove them easily. You can also add a pupil really easily using your icon to add that new learner into your environment. The same with teachers. I'll cover how you add teachers in a second, but if you have any additional teachers or someone perhaps leaves or goes to another school so doesn't need access to your learner's environment, you can remove that person there. But for this, we're going to essentially use our blue icon, Create a Tile. We're given then 6 sections. There are 7, but 7 is basically it's complete. And these take you through step by step how to create your class notebook. When you're creating it, you would give it a name, and we'll use cohort 2, this is this group today, and it will check that that's an acceptable name. It then gives you this overview. I always recommend that if people are unfamiliar with using Class Notebook, that when you're creating it, you take a little screenshot or a photo just to remind yourself of what each section can do and who has what rights. So unlike Susan's OneNote, Class Notebook has 3 main sort of big thick plastic dividers within our notebook. In addition, we can use the normal traditional dividers that she showed you with our sections. So our big thick dividers within our folder fall into 3 categories. The first is a collaboration space. It can be seen by the teacher and the student, and both have rights to edit. I normally describe it with my young people as a graffiti wall, essentially, for their learning, and we'll cover how that can be used in a second. The next big section that we have is the content library. The teacher can add information, but the pupils can only view the information. Again, this is a great place if you want to keep a store of perhaps display materials, information that might be references that you might not want to share out and photocopy, print, but it's a valuable place for you to be able to store, pupils to refer to and access, and they can view them at any time. But as I say, they can't take a copy and they can't edit them. And last, the teacher can edit it, the student can edit it, but they can only edit their own. So if they're registered as a student in your notebook, they only see their own section. They may see the names of other learners within your classroom, but they can't access their work. So we select Next. As with our team session, it's always good practice to have another member of staff on board. This ensures that should you fall ill, take time off, or retire or leave for another reason, then someone else still has access to your information. At this point in time as well, a lot of schools are issuing guidance around senior leadership being members of their OneNotes or teams, so it's always worth checking with your local authority or your school if there's a policy around that. All you would do with that is type in the person's name you want to join your team, select it, and click Next. You will need to know their Glow username, but it's fast. If you have their address, you can paste it in and it will identify them for you. Once you have as many names as you need, you would just select Next. This is where you do need to know your students' usernames. You can add to this at any time using those purple tiles I just showed you, but unlike Team, you can't issue a code. So I would need to know the person's name. So I'm going to add Susan, as she's on here as my pupil demonstrator today. So I'm going to put in ESA. There's Susan there. If I wanted to add another student, I would just type in their name there and it would add them. Once I've got the students that I need to have added, I simply click Next. Again, personalization is what class OneNote is all about. So in our class notebook, we can identify what we want all our students to do. So for those of you who've ever handed out packs for your class, you've spent ages getting it all in the right order. All of that can be done with one click and is then issued to all students. So here are what it's suggesting that I want to give out to my class. So I don't really want handouts because that's where I'm going to use my collaboration and space. I don't want homework. I am going to keep quizzes, but I would also like a section where they're going to do research. So any classwork Susan does will go in her class notes. Any forms or quizzes that she perhaps does will put in her quizzes section, and any research that she's going to complete, she can use that space there. Again, because I'm the teacher, I can have overview, I can comment and give feedback, and I can also add these sections. If I think later in the year we do a new topic and we need to add another section, I can do that then. And I'll show you at the end where we can add. So, as I was saying, what I can then do is we can edit these at any point. But when we're happy, we simply click correct. Apologies about that. I did warn you all, my Wi-Fi is not happy today. So essentially, it will then, once it's loaded, take you to this page. What I normally say to people is, so you'll get this option on your schools network. You just ignore this. You probably aren't able to add in any downloads and add-ins. If you're working from home, this may be an option for you. Again, you can open it online or open it there. I normally suggest to people to go back out and open up their class notebook through this tabs here. So I'm going to go to Manage Notebook. Eventually it's going to open. Here's our demo that we created. I can edit it. That's where I would edit it at any point in the future. I can then open my notebook. I don't need to do that every time. If I was using this on a daily basis and I clicked class notebook, it would start to know that I just want this one to open up straight away. So here is our class notebook, as I explained earlier. So we have our collaboration space, we have our welcome area, we have our content library, and if you see, we've then got these little subdividers in here, and here is Susan's section. So here are Susan's tabs with all of her stuff in them. So first of all, we're going to go to the collaboration space. So if I click that first tab in there, in collaboration space, all I'm going to do is add a section, and I might call it Term 1. There we go. So within Term 1, I'm then going to give my page a title, and I'm going to say, how is your day? I think after my Wi-Fi dropping, I might say my day is a bit stressful, but fun. And I'm going to ask Susan to collaborate on this page too. So Susan, can you just pop a question on there for me? Her day has been awesome, brilliant. So as you can see, I can share what I've been doing. I can share what my learners can share with me what they've been doing. So we can put in the problem of the day, a statement of the day, give just a brainstorming activity, anything at all that you just want some people's feedback. As Susan's, I think, about to show us, we can also have images on there, which I think that's a sticker that's just loading up. But what we can do is we can go back through and say I had a maths problem up here and I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to maybe identify someone who was working really well or somebody who maybe wasn't quite understanding the challenge that I'd set on this page. I can use the View section to show the authors. So you can see Susan's put an image up. She's also added a statement, and there is my statement. So again, really quick and easy. But if I was showing this on my Promethean Classroom Interactive board, Promethean board, Clever Touch board, Smart, whatever it is you're using, I might not want to have my pupils' names available. But if I was using looking at it offline or looking at it to check understanding, I want to do a little review of understanding, I could do that, show authors. So view and show authors. It's a really useful way. It also makes sure that our reluctant learners who might not be willing to contribute so much on a big open space feel a little bit more confident. Okay, again, so all I did there was I kept this section here. If I wanted to get rid of the section, I could right click and delete it. Or if I'm on an iPad, I can slide the tab along to the left and it would give me the option to remove it. At any point, if I add a page, I can move my pages around so I can reorder them. So if I'm planning maybe during the holidays or during my reduced class contact time, what I want to do for the week, I can create all my pages in the order that I want them to be. So this would maybe be for Monday, this one would be for Tuesday. And all I would do is drag and drop my pages into the correct order. So I'm able to organize that. And again, if I don't want a page, I can remove it. As Susan says, I can go into the paper color section on here and I can make my background slightly different. And I'll show you hopefully if there's time still, the offline version, as she showed you, when you go into view, you will also see an add lines or add graph paper. The content library works in a similar way. You'll notice that I'm also given in each of these sections a little guide. I normally tend to keep these in. I find them really useful. If I have a new member of the class, it's a quick way for them to be able to get some information without necessarily having to ask another person or come and ask me, and they can work more independently. But like I say, if you want to get rid of them, you can double click or right click or slide depending on the device you're on. But in my content library, where I'm sharing information for people to view, I can then post up here a little overview. So I'm going to put in a document. So if I go to insert, just as Susan did, I'm going to insert the printout because I want everybody to see all of the document. Choose the file and I'll just put in the benchmarks. And I'm going to insert that. So I probably wouldn't share the benchmarks with my young people. I might, but I'm going to let them see kind of what we've been doing. So as this loads, I get the icon to tell me what kind of file it is and the name of the file. If I'm on a Mac or an iPad, I would simply double click and it will give me the option to download. If I'm on a Windows device or a Chrome device, I can right click and it will allow me to download. So as I scroll through here, I might be using this if this was maybe one that I was keeping and I just wanted my pupils to see what they'd covered themselves. I can go to the draw section. This works beautifully on an iPad. It does work also on a laptop that I'm on at the moment. And like you saw earlier, I do have a bit of a lag on my computer. So hopefully this will show up eventually. But I can highlight, I don't know, that should appear, but give it a second. I can highlight the sections. So probably more neatly than that if I was doing it on my own. But that allows you to see. Because I'm broadcasting this, it takes slightly more bandwidth and it's also sharing my screen. So that's why it's not quite as fast as it normally is. But as Susan has said, we both use OneNote all the time, which is testimony to how stable it is as a general rule of thumb. Again, in that draw section, I can also use the maths tools that Susan demonstrated. So if I go on to text and in maths, and it gives me a little guide into how I'm sharing this. The maths tools in Class Notebook always give you this guide just to help you out to start with. But how do I share work with my pupils? So I've got my spaces. We've got our collaboration space, which is our graffiti wall. And I might have term by term and break it down by that. I've then got my content library, and in my content library, I might use that as the library of resources that I might issue out to my learners. So for my first statement, what I'm going to do is in my content library, I'm going to make a section in here that is called forms, just so that I know where they all are as a template. So I've now got this section says forms. I'm going to call one Easter, and I would just select the page. I'm going to go to Insert, just as Susan did, so reinforcing what she was showing you. Select Forums, and it should have signed me in, but it's maybe signed me back out. There we go. And all I'm going to do is select which animal represents. So just as Susan did, I can re-edit it, I can add a new one, but I'm just going to insert this pre-made one. So here's my forum. Now, at the moment, all of my young people would go to there, and once it's been submitted, it would show as submitted. So that won't really help me if I want to issue it to my whole class. So Class Notebook has this tile here, which is so useful. What it will do is it will allow you to distribute the page just as if you were handing out a worksheet in the classroom to all of your pupils. So if I select that tab at the start, you'll see I have lots of options. I can distribute the page to everyone that's in this class notebook. So if it's a member, if it's a team class notebook that's automatically created, every pupil who's in the team will have one of these sections, and it will automatically distribute to everybody who has one of these sections. I can distribute it to a specific individual if they've maybe been doing some extension work, or they're just looking at a project themselves, or I can create a group simply by selecting group. I don't have any here and I only have one pupil, but it's very easy because all I would do is put add new group and write in the pupils. But for this, just get rid of that. For this, I'm going to go to distribute page, and then we're going to go to individual for this. So all I would do is select the individual, Susan, she's only a member of my group, and next. It'll then ask me which section of her sections I want to add it to. So which tab I want to put it in. So obviously I want to put it in quizzes. And then distribute. You get a purple line and a green Dunbar at the bottom. There we go. So it should be in Susan's section. Now, my broadband's not great, as we've seen. So if I tab it, you can see it's really instant. It's already there. And if Susan was to complete it, so we'll come out of that and go back in, and maybe Susan can pop that there. It will show me, if I click that page for her, Susan can give me a message when she's done. She can also work remotely on class work. So if I go into her class notes or research, I can see what work she's done. So we can see here Susan's put a sticker on, she's happy with herself, she's given her report a title, and she's done a piece of work herself around Romeo and Juliet. If I get rid of this box, what I can then see is I can read through it, and just as Susan showed you, I might want to click on the page beside this paragraph, and I might want to give her some feedback. So I'm going to use some audio feedback. So, well done, Susan. You've clearly given me a good outline of the story and plot of Romeo and Juliet. Thank you. I could use the 2 stars and a wish or anything that really works well. And when that young person, as soon as I've recorded it, it's available for that young person. So they could instantly go to their page. So, well done, Susan. You can all hear me already, and you heard me do that. If I play it back and I think, oh, I'm not happy with that, or maybe I stumbled over something, I would simply select it and use the backspace or delete button to get rid of it. But that allows me to give instant feedback, because we can often be given 30 odd stories to read or pieces of work. That gives me verbal feedback. My young people can also respond to my feedback really quickly rather than having to add in, or they can add in their own statement by giving me, I would like to explain, and give me a statement around what they've done. So if I was to then put in my content library, if I go up here, I'm going to add a new page in, and maybe this time I want to put in some reading work for them to do. So again, if we think about our budgets, how we, especially just now, we're away all remotely working, how do we get information out to our young people? I could insert a file, so I could insert it as an attachment. So they get lots of information in one page, so I could put that one in. So all I could do is, if I had lots of coursework, I could give lots of pieces of work on one page and just say reading for the week, and then we could give a form at the end of it. I could also, however, remove that, and I can insert a printout that I want them to read and scroll through. So if I use this report from EEF, insert, it allows my young people to know they have to go to the content page, reading for week of the 7th. They can go to that page, they would see this, and then they would scroll through. That's obviously taken its wee time to do it. How are we doing for time? We're a little bit over. Okay, is there any questions, Susan?
No, I think we're up to date with questions.
Up to date. Okay. So, oh, there we go. So you can see my young people then can access any resources that I may be suggesting that they read, and I can then give them a challenge, which I would then create a new page, maybe at the bottom. I would say reading challenge in here.
Jenny, I've got one question here. Can you undo a page distribution?
Yes, so you can undo it, but as Susan said, a lot of features work better offline than on. So it's not possible to do in here. However, if I go to the offline version, so the desktop tool, if I go into here, I can then choose to distribute or manage my new sections. So I can manage everything that's in there. So that will allow me to do it in here. So I can manage my notebook, manage my classes, and I can also issue or deissue any information. So delete a page, and I can't remove a section, but I can remove a page. Does that help?
Thank you.
No problem. So just really quickly, just because we are over time and I had dropped off the network, which doesn't help, what we're going to also quickly show you is in the view section, just where Susan showed you. So here's my cut down menu. I can switch my background to be light or dark. I've got that immersive reader tool that's so powerful for all of our young people. I have my background section and I have the grids. So again, if I was to add a page in here, I then wanted this to perhaps be a maths activity, and then I wanted to zoom in to make it much larger, and maybe I was using an iPad, I could use this paper with my younger learners. Really, really easy. At any point, I can use my fingers to pinch with my mouse, or I can use the zoom in, zoom out. But that then allows me to scroll around the page and have as much as I want on it. You'll also see that in the draw section, I get some slightly additional tools that are really useful. And in here is the section where Susan was describing with the audio and different options, again, that are available. Because I'm on a Mac, some of those features that Susan showed you won't show up here, but if I was to use a different device with a different version, it would show up slightly differently. So if your device, a few questions earlier when I was doing the questions, were saying they weren't seeing different tools, your browser that you're using can affect the tools that you see, but also the device that you're using gives you slightly different versions if it's Mac versus Windows. Not enough to make it not usable. I use an iPad as well as a Mac as well as a Windows. Everything that the core stuff you'll try and do is all still there and works really smoothly. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Susan. There you go.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Jenny. So we've seen OneNote, we've seen Class OneNote. If you do create a team site, Class OneNote is there by default for you. So that is a really easy way to set up a Class OneNote. Along the top, you can see you've got your posts, your files, and then this is where Class OneNote will sit. So with a few questions about getting notifications, if you did use Class OneNote within a Teams environment and you set a piece of work in Class Notebook, then I would thoroughly recommend setting that as an assignment as well. post on the assignment that there's some work in class notebook. The pupils, they would then complete the work in the class OneNote. When they're finished, go into their assignments, click hand in. You can then grade that assignment, and as you know, all that grades will then be in your grades book within Teams. So it's a really nice, easy way to manage both applications in the one place. Again, with all the benefits behind Teams, where it is a digital hub for your classroom content, where you can have everything in one place, you can have conversations, share work, etc. And of course, you can add additional teachers as and when required. So for extra help and support, no longer are we creating lots of tutorials and help guides, because we would thoroughly recommend when you log into Glow, you've got your 4 launchpads. If you go to the national launchpad, we've got a link to the Microsoft Educator community. Once you've created your profile, you can then participate in some online courses. So for example, there's courses for Teams, for OneNote, for OneDrive. Anything you want to learn more about, you will get a course on there. Most of the courses are half an hour. You then get a digital certificate and a digital badge. So for your own professional development, it's absolutely excellent. We've also got Glow Connect, so I've got links along the top of these slides. There's also a link on the National Launchpad. So there's one page in Glow Connect dedicated to OneNote with lots of useful links, and there's also a page for Class OneNote, again with lots of links. The Microsoft Educator community, where your courses are, and you can also explore learning paths. These are some of the courses, so Introduction to OneNote, and there's lots of different ones that you can participate in. Usually they're about half an hour each one, so I would thoroughly recommend having a wee look in the Microsoft Educator community. If there's one top tip we'd like to leave you with today, if you're ever faced with this screen, it is looking for your Glow email address. If you're school-based, that's Glow username at glow.sch.uk. For Education Scotland staff, it's .gov.uk. For local authority staff, it's glowmail.org.uk. But you'll find your email address on your profile on your RM Unify Launchpad. I've pulled together some really useful links, so if you do want to find out more about OneNote and Class OneNote, I've pulled these links into these slides. And these slides are available in this Teams site along the top section that says Files. There's also a link in there for a YouTube video about OneNote. I'd also recommend that if you are a Twitter user, that you follow these channels here. So OneNote Education and Microsoft Teams and certainly Mike are always sharing hints and tips with these platforms, so it's always a good place to go. It's also nice if you post questions, because they always reply to you, which is really useful. And of course, the Did You Learn Scot one on the right-hand side. Items covered, an overview of OneNote. We saw how we could create a OneNote and how we can add lots of content, how the content is divided into sections and pages, and how it supports all kinds of rich media. Jenny then went over and gave you an overview of Class OneNote and how you can set that up and how you can add additional teachers and students and the different areas that teachers and students have access to. We then saw how we could integrate Class OneNote into Teams and how that happens for you when you create a class Teams site. We then looked at where we could go for extra help and support. We realised that's an awful lot of information in a short space of time. Jenny has shared the evaluation in the chat section, and we'd be really grateful if you could please feedback. And if there's anything else you want to find out about, please put it in the comments. Or if there's any more webinars that you want to see, then again, please share that information. Otherwise, please post any questions in the chat section in the Teams site. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.